Hi, welcome to Delicious and Light. I'm Dina D'Ambrosi. Tomorrow we're having some friends over for some football fun day stuff, and so I'm going to be making for dessert apple pie cups. So instead of making a big apple pie, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook apples on the stove top. I'm going to put a little crust on the bottom with the apples and a streusel topping on top, and I'm going to serve that cold. So the first thing I want to do is this recipe will serve 8 people. So I have just 8 clear plastic cups. You can use jars as well. If you'd like, you can use mason jars. That would be fun too. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel and dice 5 apples for this recipe. So I'm just going to go around and peel and dice the apples. I've already cored this one. So we're just going to peel this around, take the skin out, and once you've got the skin off, then you can just dice them. And remember, we are on YouTube and we are also on our website, deliciouslight.com. And if you enter your email in there, every time we put a new recipe up and post a new recipe, you'll get notification about it. You can also look us up on YouTube. So all I'm going to do is grab a bowl and dice 5 of these apples. This recipe is going to be super easy. We're just going to cook the apples on the stove top, then we're going to make the crust, and then we're just going to put everything in a cup and cook some streusel topping and put that on top of the cups as well. So for this recipe, what you want to do is get 5 apples that you're going to core, peel, and dice like I'm doing now. You're going to use a teaspoon of cinnamon, a half a teaspoon of allspice, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves for this. So we're just going to put these apples in here, and then what we're going to do is add a cup of apple cider with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch and a 1/4 cup of sugar, and that just helps the apple pie mixture just be nice and thick, and it's going to be like an apple pie in the middle. So what I'm going to do is finish up these apples, and I'll be right back with you. Alright, so I'm just finishing up my last apple here, and we're going to dice that and then put the other ingredients in. And so let's just get this last apple in. In the meantime, what I'm also going to do is heat up a large saute pan on medium while I put the rest of the ingredients together. So with the diced apples, what you want to do is get a 1/4 cup of sugar. Just add that to the apples. A 1/4 cup may not seem like a lot for the amount of apples that we're doing, but we're going to be adding a cup of apple cider, which has a lot of natural sugar in it. So that's why I'm keeping the sugar low on the apples. You just don't need that much for the with the apple cider. And we're going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon, and half a teaspoon of allspice. And this is where you can get creative. If you're someone who really likes to add more cinnamon, you can do that, less allspice, whatever you like. You can add more or less to make it more spicy or less spicy. And we're just going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. Cloves is a super strong spice, so I always use that sparingly, but I really do like to use cloves because I think it smells and tastes delicious. I'm just going to get a mixing spoon, mix this in here. The apples are nicely coated with the cinnamon, the sugar, and all the spices in there. And then to give this a nice rich flavor, I'm actually going to get a tablespoon of butter spread. And this just adds a little depth to the flavor of the apples. It's really nice, and it's worth using a tablespoon of apple spread. A tablespoon of butter spread. So let's just get this in the pan and get that melting. Let's raise the heat a little bit to medium. Just get your butter spread melted in there. So we're just going to let that melt for a moment. All right, so the apples are all going to be put into the pan there, and while that's starting to cook, I'm going to get a cup of apple cider and 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. So if you've ever bought apple pie mix filling for a real quick apple pie, that's basically what we're making here. So the cornstarch is going to make it thick, like a thicker liquid, or it's not even a liquid, it'll make it a thicker mixture, and it'll help the apples cook in nicely there. Let me just get a whisk and whisk in the cornstarch. It's worth noting that if you're working with cornstarch, you have to work with a cold or cool liquid. If your liquid is hot and you put the cornstarch in, it will seize up on you. So as the apples are starting to cook, I'm just going to put the apple cider mixture in there. I'm going to stir this to get it mixed in. And then I'm going to cook this for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to let this come up to a boil slowly though on medium heat, and then I'm going to lower the heat and let it cook down. So I'll catch you back in a couple minutes and I'll show you what it's going to look like. All right, as the apples are cooking, so I brought them up to a boil and now I have them just simmering on the stove, and I'm going to continue to cook these until they're really soft. And so we're going to let them still go. While they're cooking, I'm going to make the bottom crust of the dessert. So you just want to get a cup of graham cracker crumbs and put that into the food processor. And with that, you want to get 6 ounces of pitted dates. So it's important to note that you want to get pitted dates and not use dates that are already chopped, because they're a little bit too dry to make a crust. You just put your pitted dates and your graham cracker crumbs in there, and then from there what you want to do is continue to pulse on and off until it resembles a crust. And what this does is, the traditional crust has melted butter in it. With graham cracker crumbs, this takes away all the fat and leaves all the flavor in the crust. So I'm going to just start to pulse, and I'm going to continue to do this for a few minutes until I have a crust. All right, so after a couple minutes of pulsing, and you do want to be patient because this takes a while and it seems like it's never going to work, but it really does. So what you're looking for is your graham cracker crumbs have gotten a lot darker, and when you press it together, it actually sticks. So that's what you're looking for, and that forms your graham cracker crust. So see that? Nice, and it's really delicious. It's a delicious crust. I've done this before for cheesecakes and it works out well. So from here, you can just store this, or if you're ready to set up, you just want to press a little on the bottom, just about, I would say about a third of the way up. But in the meantime, the apples are fully cooked, and how you know that is you just want to test one. So grab an apple, it should be super soft, and you just want to taste for the doneness. Now, the liquid in the pan will actually get firmer as it cools down. Perfect. So they're soft, but they're not mushy like applesauce. So you see all the liquid in the pan? So what you want to do is have your apples just cool down, and as your apples are cooling down, you can make the streusel topping that's going to be sprinkled on top. All right, so we've got the apple filling cooling. We've got the graham cracker crust for the bottom all ready to go. The last thing to make is the streusel topping. And we're going to start with a half a cup of low-calorie, low-fat butter spread. So I'm just going to measure this in a microwave-safe bowl because we want to melt this. So I'm just going to put half a cup in here and melt this for about 30 seconds in the microwave. So let's just pop this right back into the microwave. In here. Also, what you want to do is set your oven to 375. We're going to be working with flour, and we want to cook this for a couple minutes. It's only about 10 minutes or so. So you want to start with a cup of flour, a cup and a half of flour. This is our cup. The wonderful thing about this streusel topping is it has never failed me. I use it for a lot of desserts, and it's always delicious. So it's 1.5 cups of flour, half a cup of brown sugar, the melted butter spread, which I heard is ready to go. So you want to pack your brown sugar in there, add it to your flour. Let's get the butter spread right here, nice and melted, and cinnamon. So super easy. All you have to do is, let's get a fork out. I like to mix the flour and the brown sugar together before I add the melted butter. So we're just going to mix that in a little bit. I'm going to put in a teaspoon. I like cinnamon a lot, so you could do half a teaspoon if you want to keep it on the light side. I'm going to put a full teaspoon in there. Stir that around a little bit. And then from there, I'm just going to add the melted butter and simply stir this around with a fork. So I've got my oven set at 375, and all I'm going to do is put this in an oven-safe baking pan, bake for about 10 minutes, and take it out. So let's just get this mixed in really nicely. So this way it gets to be a nice even crumble. You can use this on top of apple pies. I've done it in the summertime when the blueberries come out. I just bake blueberries in the oven and I put this on top with a little sugar in the blueberries and some cinnamon. It always comes out so good. All right, so that's set. I'm just going to get a baking pan. And I'm going to cover this with foil so it doesn't stick. Or it bakes nicely. And since we've already cooked our apples, we don't need to put this on top of the fruit and bake it. So this is going to be something we're going to sprinkle on top. So just want to even this out nicely onto the pan, just like you would on top of a pie or a cobbler. And bake this in the oven for about 10 minutes. Your flour will be cooked and all the ingredients will be nicely incorporated. So 375 in there. All right, so the streusel topping is done. It's been cooking for about 10 minutes and it's cooked and crispy. And so we're just going to let this cool, and as we let that cool, we can put our cups together. Now, if you'd like, you can make these in mason jars, and instead of cooking the streusel topping in the oven by itself, you can put, and let's get the crust, you can put the crust on the bottom, the filling in the middle, the raw streusel on top. Bake it in the oven at 375 for about 15 to 20 minutes until the apple filling is nice and bubbly, and you can have a nice apple pie in a jar. It'll be fantastic. I actually just didn't have the 6-ounce mason jars to do, so I'm just building them in this cup, and what I'm going to do is I'll just serve them at room temperature. So you just want to put enough of the crust in each cup to just fill the bottom, probably about a third way up the cup. So I'm just going to continue to build this. All right, so I put all the crust on the bottom, and I'm just pressing down now, just so it's packed in there as a nice crust to the apple pie in a cup. This will also be great if you want to serve a little whipped cream on top of this. However, I will say that adds fat and calories, so you may want to, if everybody's watching their weight, you may may not want to do that. The streusel topping is so delicious, you really don't need to do that. And then from there, I just put the warm apple filling. Because these are plastic cups, I made sure that they are not too hot to put in the cups. And then you just fill each cup from there. I always make sure when I'm doing something like this, I fill all the cups but with a little bit, and then I add a little bit more as I have extra filling. And then if I really have a lot of extra filling, then my family comes and just devours it. All right, so we've got all the cups filled a little bit. So I'm just gonna put a tiny bit more in each. All right, and then the last thing is I've got my streusel topping. So it's in the pan, I'm just gonna break it up with my fingers. It's super easy. Just put the crumbles on top, like this. And to be honest with you, just evenly distribute. I'm gonna try it right now and see how this came out. Apple pie in a cup. Let's see how this works out. Get a little bit of everything in there. It's so good. And it's healthy because you've got apples in there, and it's sweet, and it's delicious, and it's low cal and low fat. Absolutely delicious. Until next time, enjoy. Thank you.